The wind howled across the frozen plains of Rathduin 9, carrying with it the echoes of a dying world. The sky burned a dull crimson from the reflection of its fractured sun, and the air shimmered with faint static from ancient radiation storms. Captain Aric Voss adjusted the seal on his helmet as his boots crunched through the snow. He had been to 100 worlds, fought in a dozen wars, and seen things that broke lesser men, but this planet felt different. It wasn't just empty. It felt forgotten. The distress beacon had led him here. Faint, flickering, buried under layers of interference. A voice in the past, calling across decades. The kind of mystery that the galaxy ignored, except for men like Voss, who could never let questions die quietly. "AI, give me a scan," he muttered. A soft tone buzzed in his earpiece. Surface is clear of energy signatures. But I detect movement, large, multiple heat sources, circling at a distance. Animals. Not exactly. The pattern suggests coordination. Voss frowned. Predators. Great. He reached the ridge, and that's when he saw it. A crash site half buried in the snow, the twisted wreck of a massive alien ship. The hull was cracked open, the metal blackened by fire. Faded symbols ran along its side, not human, but familiar. He'd seen them in war archives. The Karnath Empire, a race that had vanished centuries ago after their own weapons turned against them. They had once ruled entire sectors through fear and brutality. Now, their bones slept under ice. Voss's breath fogged inside his helmet. He switched on his shoulder light and began his descent into the wreck. The corridors were frozen solid. Long-dead consoles blinked faintly as the suit's energy field brushed against them. Frozen bodies, skeletal, in tattered armor, lined the walls. He moved carefully, reading the markings burned into the deck plates. Warship designation. KORVH Prime. But something caught his attention. Deep claw marks on the walls. Not made by machines. Made by living hands. Desperate ones. "AI, record this," he said quietly. As he reached the main chamber, he stopped cold. There were footprints in the frost. Fresh ones. Large. Heavy. He turned slowly, weapon raised. The light swept across the room and landed on a shape crouched near the far wall. A creature, tall as 2 men, wrapped in tattered armor that shimmered faintly in the cold. Its eyes glowed faint yellow, and its ribs pressed sharply against thin, scaled skin. It was starving. It stared at him, silent, trembling, ready to strike. "Easy," Voss said softly. It hissed, low and weak, and collapsed to its knees. Behind it, shadows moved. Dozens of them. A pack. All thin, all trembling. The survivors of a dead empire. Predators. And they were dying. For a moment, neither side moved. Voss lowered his rifle. Slowly. He reached into his pack and pulled out a silver ration bar. He unwrapped it carefully and tossed it into the snow between them. The nearest alien flinched. It sniffed the air, then snatched the ration and tore it in half, offering a piece to the smallest one beside it. Voss froze. That wasn't animal instinct. That was intelligence. He glanced at his wrist scanner. The readings were clear. These creatures were Karnath, the apex hunters of their age. Yet here they were, reduced to starving survivors, clinging to life in a world that wanted them gone. "Captain," his AI said quietly. Multiple life signs approaching fast. Same species. Hundreds. Voss's heart pounded. Hundreds. They've surrounded the ship. He moved to the nearest viewport, brushing frost away. Outside in the red snowlight, he saw them, silhouettes moving in the storm, a pack the size of a small army. They didn't attack. They waited, watching. Voss didn't understand. If they wanted him dead, he'd be gone already. Why wait? Then he noticed their eyes. Not rage, not hatred, but fear. They were afraid of him. He took a slow step forward, confused. The moment he did, they all stepped back, in perfect unison. He lowered his weapon again. What the hell? He glanced down at the ration pack, then at them. His stomach twisted with a strange feeling. Pity? AI, he said softly. Run a bioscan on their vitals. The voice came back grim. Severe malnutrition, muscle decay, organ collapse. They're starving, Captain. They won't last another week. Voss looked back at the trembling alien in front of him, the one that had shared its food. Its eyes were on him again. It wasn't asking for mercy. It was asking for help. He didn't know why he did it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe madness. He took off his glove, ignoring the sting of the frozen air, and held his bare hand out slowly. The creature tilted its head. Then, with a cautious step, it mirrored him, pressing one clawed hand against the glass between them. Human flesh and alien talon, separated by a thin layer of frost. Two species who had once been enemies, now both fighting the same thing, extinction. For a long moment, neither moved. The storm howled around them, shaking the wreck, screaming like ghosts that refused to be forgotten. Voss exhaled, his breath misting against the glass. We're not so different, he whispered. Behind the glass, the alien blinked slowly, a flicker of understanding in its dim eyes. Outside, a shadow moved through the storm. Bigger, heavier, a new shape emerged, something massive, armored, and awake. Voss's AI spoke in a whisper. Captain, something else is coming. Voss looked up, eyes narrowing. The snow shifted. The pack began to scatter, their fear turning to panic. He gripped his rifle, every muscle tensed. Showtime, he muttered. The storm screamed across the plains like a living thing. Snow and ash twisted together, swirling in violent spirals that blotted out the stars. Captain Aric Voss stood in the shadow of the wreck, visor glowing faintly blue against the chaos. His breath fogged in the freezing air, though inside his chest, it felt like something far colder was stirring. Instinct. He knew that sound. Heavy steps, deep, deliberate, the kind that didn't belong to the starving creatures hiding behind the wreckage. This was something stronger, something that still remembered how to hunt. AI, he said, quietly, scanned the movement. The voice in his ear was a whisper of static. Processing, target mass, 6 tons. Exoskeletal plating detected. Energy readings unstable. Unstable? Implies mutation, possibly the result of long-term famine or radiation adaptation. Voss's eyes narrowed. A survivor evolved. The snow parted as something massive rose from storm. It had once been Carnith. That much he could tell. But starvation and centuries of isolation had changed it. Its body was fused with fragments of old armor. Its ribs pulsed with dim, red light. And its face, what was left of it, was a mix of fury and pain. It roared, shaking the ground. The pack around the wreck cried out in reply, but none dared move. The monster's gaze found Voss, and it charged. The impact threw him backward. His exos had absorbed the worst of it, but the force still rattled his bones. He slid through the snow, rifle spinning from his grip. The creature struck again, claws tearing into the metal hull beside him. Sparks burst through the air. AI suppressive flare now. A blinding pulse erupted from his gauntlet, bathing the battlefield in blue-white light. The beast recoiled, roaring, its single good ice shrinking from the glare. Voss rolled to his feet, grabbing his rifle. He fired 3 rounds into its chest, plasma burst that lit the storm. The creature stumbled but didn't fall. Its blood steamed against the snow, dark and metallic. Not enough, he muttered. The pack behind him stirred, dozens of them. They weren't attacking. They were watching. Then he realized what they were waiting for. They were waiting for him to win. "Fine," he said under his breath. "Let's give them a show." Voss triggered his suit's kinetic amplifiers. Blue light flared down his limbs, his boots grinding deep into the frozen ground. He sprinted forward, faster than the storm. The beast swung. He ducked under the blow, sliding across the ice, firing upward into its throat. Plasma tore through tissue and smoke. The creature reeled, bellowing in agony. But before he could finish it, something unexpected happened. It stopped fighting. It dropped to one knee, coughing out a strange sound, deep, guttural, rhythmic, like a chant. The smaller predators echoed it, their voices rising in haunting unison. Voss froze, his weapon lowered. What the hell? The creature looked at him, its breath visible, its eyes dimming. It wasn't rage anymore. It was surrender. And then it spoke, broken, mangled words, but clear enough to send a chill down his spine. "Who, man? Feed the pack." Voss stood there, rifle trembling in his hands. The massive creature collapsed, shaking the ground one last time. The pack around him grew quiet, watching him with wide, desperate eyes. "AI," he said softly, "confirm that. Did you hear what I heard?" Affirmative. Translation consistent. Subject used simplified galactic tongue. Then that means they remember. Voss said, "They still think." The AI hesitated. "Captain, your rations cannot sustain them. Feeding this many would be impossible," he finished. "Yeah, I know." He looked around, the endless snow, the broken wreck, the glow of dying technology. And then something clicked in his mind. Maybe he couldn't feed them like humans, but the ship still had a reactor, still had heat, and heat meant life. He sprinted toward the reactor core, his boots thudding across metal as he tore open panels and rewired ancient conduits. The air filled with static and the smell of ozone. The Carnith watched him, cautious but curious. "What are you doing?" "Kshir," his AI companion, asked through the comms. "Teaching old ghosts how to eat again," he replied. With a spark and a growl, the reactor hummed to life. Vents along the ship's hull opened, releasing a wave of heat and light. The snow around the wreck began to melt, exposing frozen roots, minerals, and long-dormant microbes beneath the surface. The pack crept closer, sniffing the warmth. They didn't understand yet. Voss knelt beside one, his gloved hand resting on its bony shoulder. Fire. The first meal humanity ever made. The creature blinked slowly, and then, for the first time, it purred. Hours passed. The storm faded. The plains glowed orange under the returning light of the reactor vents. The predators lay near the warmth, their bodies still trembling but calmer now. Some even slept. Voss stood at the entrance of the wreck, exhausted, watching over them. "You just made enemies into students," his AI said. He smiled faintly. "Not students. Survivors. Captain, this action violates Directive 12 of Frontier Law." "Yeah," Voss interrupted. "So does being human." He looked down at the lifeless titan that had once led them. Its final words echoed in his mind. Feed the pack. And he had. Not with food, but with hope. A faint tremor ran through the ground. The AI's tone shifted. "Captain, I'm detecting movement. Larger than before. Direction, North Ridge." Voss's eyes hardened. "Another one?" "No. Many. Hundreds." He reached for his rifle and stepped forward, the reactor light painting his armor in gold and blue. "Well," he said quietly, "looks like the neighbors' herd dinner's ready." The horizon burned. Not with sunlight. Rathuan. 9 had no real sun anymore, but with movement. Shadows rolling through the blizzard, hundreds of them, crawling over the ice like living storms. Captain Aric Voss stood at the mouth of the wreck, armor steaming from the reactor's heat. His breath came out in white plumes as he stared into the storm. Behind him, the surviving predators stirred uneasily, low growls rumbling in their throats. "AI," he said quietly. "Confirm life signs." Confirmed, came the steady voice in his ear. 200, possibly more. All Carnot-class organisms. Larger than average. Energy readings unstable. Mutations? Likely. Radiation exposure. Extreme starvation and genetic decay. These aren't soldiers, Captain. They're revenants. Voss's jaw tightened. Then they're not coming to talk. The pack behind him began to whimper, pressing closer to the warmth of the reactor vents. The air trembled with distant roars. Voss looked back at the group, the ones he'd saved, the ones who now trusted him. Their eyes glowed faintly yellow in the dark. Fear and loyalty flickered, in equal measure. He took a slow breath. "You fed them, Aric," he muttered to himself. "Now you got to protect them." The first wave came like a living avalanche. Shapes burst through the storm, towering, twisted forms of what once were Carnith warriors. Their armor was fused into bone, their claws black with frostbite. Some dragged broken weapons behind them like toys. They weren't here to hunt. They were here to consume. Voss leveled his rifle. The plasma coils hissed as the first creature lunged. Fast, too fast for its size. He fired 3 bursts. The blast tore through its chest, spilling molten ichor across the snow. It fell, twitching. The pack behind him recoiled, hissing. He turned his head just long enough to shout, "Stay back. This isn't your fight." But even as he said it, the largest of them, the one with the golden eyes, stepped forward beside him. It let out a roar so deep it rattled the ice. The pack answered. Dozens of starving predators rose from the snow and formed a circle around Voss. Their ribs still showed, their bodies weak, but something had awakened in them. A spark. Voss smirked. "Guess that's a no, then." The battle was chaos. Blades of light and fire ripped through the storm. Voss moved like a shadow among monsters, firing, dodging, striking. Every movement was calculated. Every decision survival. The Carnith fought beside him. Clumsy at first, then in rhythm, as if remembering a long-lost dance. He used the reactor vents to his advantage. The heat disoriented the mutated ones, made their flesh crack under sudden warmth. He lured them into traps, melted snow collapsing into pits that swallowed them whole. But for every one that fell, 2 more came. "AI!" he shouted over comms. "Give me a way out." "There is none. You are surrounded. Then we make our own." He pointed toward the reactor's main conduit, where glowing veins of energy pulsed through the snow. "Overload sequence," he ordered. "Localized detonation. That will destroy the ship. You'll vaporize everything within." I said do it. The ship's hull began to groan, metal warping as the overload sequence started. The reactor's glow intensified, turning the snowfields into a sea of golden light. The remaining Carnid drew close to him, their leader, the golden-eyed one, standing tall, its breath ragged but steady. It looked down at him and let out a soft growl that almost sounded like a question. Voss met its gaze. "If we burn feeding the fire." The alien tilted its head, then nodded. The ground shook as the reactor ruptured. A blast of molten air tore through the storm, lighting up the night like dawn. The mutated horde screamed as the heat washed over them, their bodies disintegrating into ash and steam. Voss was thrown backward, slammed into the snow, his visor cracking. His suit alarms blared, but he ignored them. The world was fire and light and roaring wind. Through the haze, he saw the golden-eyed Carnith, standing tall in the inferno, shielding two smaller ones with its body. The heat burned its flesh, but it didn't move. When the explosion faded, only silence remained. The wind returned. The fire dimmed. The snow began to fall again. Voss pushed himself up, coughing, his armor scorched and smoking. The wreck was gone, nothing left but molten glass and faintly glowing soil. The remaining predators gathered around him, blinking at the light. He looked up at the golden-eyed leader. Half its face was gone, melted away, but its eyes still glowed, steady and defiant. Voss saluted it silently. The creature nodded once before collapsing into the snow. Hours passed before the storm truly died. Voss sat near the still warm crater, his rifle resting on his knees. His AI broke the silence. "Captain, life signs are stabilizing. The survivors will live." He nodded, eyes distant. "They earned it. You defied direct orders. You destroyed valuable tech. You risked your life for—" "Don't finish that sentence. For predators." Voss smiled faintly. "No, for people." He looked out across the frozen horizon, where the surviving Carnith gathered near the heat vents, sharing the warmth, not fighting, not starving, living. For the first time, Rathuin 9 didn't feel dead. It felt reborn. Then the AI spoke again, voice sharper this time. "Captain, I'm receiving a signal. Not from the planet. From orbit." Voss frowned. "Human?" "No. Carnith frequency. Ancient code. It's answering your beacon." He stood slowly, snow falling over his shoulders like ash. "Then the galaxy just heard that we fed the monsters." He slung his rifle across his back and started walking toward the rising smoke. "Question is," he said quietly, "who's coming to dinner next?" The silence didn't last. In the frozen aftermath of fire, the air itself began to hum, low at first, a tremor under the skin, then rising into a deep, resonant vibration that shook the bones of the planet. Captain Aric Voss stood at the center of the crater, visor cracked, armor scorched, and eyes locked on the sky. Above the shattered clouds, something vast moved, a shape outlining gold and black, shifting like a shadow across the heavens. The surviving Carnith froze, their heads tilting upward in unison. Every one of them made the same sound, a low, mournful wail that wasn't fear. It was recognition. "AI," Voss said quietly, "tell me I'm not seeing what I think I am." The signal originates from orbit. Transponder signature matches no current registry. Cross-referencing archives. Match found. Carnith Empire flagship designation. Sovereign-class dreadnought. The Imperator's breath. Voss blinked. That ship's been dead for 400 years. Apparently, Captain, not anymore. The sky cracked open. From behind the clouds descended a colossal vessel, half a kilometer long, its hull scarred with the burn marks of forgotten wars. It wasn't flying. It was gliding, silent, graceful, like a predator descending upon its kill. The Carnith pack sank to their knees, their claws pressed to the ice. The air shimmered as the ship's underside opened, spilling down beams of amber light that swept across the surface. "Scans," Voss ordered. "The ship is alive." His AI whispered. "Organic components integrated with the structure. Energy source unknown. It's responding to the same reactor frequency you activated." Voss's jaw clenched. "So when I lit that fire, they heard it. They didn't just hear it," the AI said softly. "They woke up." A single drop pod detached from the dreadnought and plunged through the clouds like a comet, trailing fire. It landed with a thunderous impact less than 100 meters away, throwing snow and ash in every direction. Voss shielded his eyes as the smoke cleared. The pod cracked open with a hiss, its metal peeling like skin. Inside stood a Carnith unlike the rest, tall, armored in plates of obsidian and bone, eyes glowing bright silver. Unlike the others, this one was strong, well-fed, deliberate in its movements. It stepped forward, claws scraping the ice, and stared directly at Voss. The golden-eyed leader, the one who had fought beside him, limped forward from the survivors. It bowed its head before the newcomer, making a sound between reverence and submission. The newcomer's voice rolled through the air, deep and resonant. "Who lit the fires of our dead?" Voss took a slow step forward, his hand resting on his rifle, but not raising it. "That would be me." The Carnith tilted its head. "You speak the tongue of the old war. Strange or prey?" "Not prey," Voss said evenly. "Not anymore." The alien studied him for a long moment. Then, to Voss's surprise, it smiled, a thin, sharp, dangerous smile. "You fed them," it said. "Our lost kin. You made them live again." "They were starving," Voss replied. "I just gave them a chance." "A chance," the Carnith repeated softly. "No one has given us that in centuries." It turned its gaze skyward. "We thought the fire of creation had died. But you, human, you relit it. The signal of the first hunger." Voss frowned. "That's what your ship responded to." The Carnith nodded. "It was our code. Our empire was built on it. Wherever fire burned, we answered. And now, you call us home." The dreadnought above began to shift again, panels unfolding like wings. From its spine, more pods attached, dozens this time, descending across the horizon. The air shimmered with static and heat. Voss's AI spoke urgently. "Captain, I'm detecting rising energy spikes, reactor-class outputs. If those pods open, this planet becomes a new Carnith colony." He looked at the survivors huddled near the crater, thin, scarred, trembling, but alive. Then he looked back at the towering envoy before him. "And what happens to them?" "They join the rebirth," the Carnith said. "Or they die as the weak always have." Voss's voice turned to iron. "Not while I'm here." The alien smile vanished. "You would stand against an empire for creatures that once devoured your kind?" Voss took a step closer, his shadow merging with the alien's in the amber light. "You mistake me for someone who fights for species. I fight for survivors." The alien stared at him for a long, silent beat. Then it laughed, a deep, echoing sound that shook the snow from the cliffs. "Human," it said, voice dripping with respect and danger, "you're either the beginning of a new age or its final mistake." Before Voss could answer, the ship above unleashed a pulse, a golden wave of energy that rippled across the planet. His suit lights flickered. The snow rose in sheets, suspended midair by some unseen force. The survivors howled, clutching their heads as their bodies began to glow with the same light. "AI!" Voss shouted. "The ship is initiating integration protocols. They're being linked to it, to the Empire's network." Voss's eyes widened. "They'll lose themselves." He sprinted toward the nearest Carnith, grabbing its arm, but the moment he touched it, vision slammed into his mind, memories not his own. He saw cities of obsidian towers, oceans of fire, billions of voices singing in perfect, terrible harmony. And beneath it all, a hunger that had no end. He tore himself free, gasping. "They're not building a colony," he said. "They're rebuilding their empire." The sky was now alive with light. The dreadnought's engines roared, shaking the planet to its core. The Carnith envoy raised its arms, voice booming over the storm. "The galaxy forgot us. The galaxy will remember." Voss leveled his rifle at its chest. "Not this way." The alien's gaze met his, neither blinking, neither yielding. And then, through the blinding glow, a single voice, not the AI, not the Carnith, whispered inside Voss's mind. "Aric Voss, do you wish to understand what it means to feed the stars?" the world dissolved into light. The light was endless, not bright like fire or plasma, but deep, alive, pulsing through every nerve in Captain Aric Voss's body. It filled his lungs, his bones, his thoughts. For a moment, he wasn't standing on Rathu 9. He wasn't standing anywhere. He was inside something vast. He saw memories that weren't his, oceans of molten metal, planets rising and falling, empires being born and devoured. Every Karnath who had ever lived screamed through him in one unified echo. Hunger, war, pride, evolution. It wasn't just history. It was the code that bound them. Then, beneath all that chaos, a voice cold, ancient, and curious. Humanity lit the signal. You carry the spark. Why? Voss tried to breathe, try to think. To survive, he said. His words came out like vibrations in the void. To keep going when everything else quits. The voice rumbled through the void like thunder. Survival without purpose is chaos. Chaos without control is extinction. Why do you endure? He clenched his fists, fighting the crushing weight pressing into his mind. Because no one else will. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then the light began to listen. Voss's eyes snapped open. And he was on the ground again, or something that looked like ground. The ice was gone. The sky above him burned with swirling gold and blue, and in the distance stood monoliths that pulsed like living hearts. The Karnath were there too, countless of them, glowing faintly, connected by threads of light running through their chests. And at the center, rising from the horizon, was a tower made of metal, bone, and memory, the Imperator's core. The ship hadn't just landed. It had grown. And Voss's AI spoke in his ear, voice trembling with static. Captain, you're not on Rathuan anymore. You're inside the network, inside the Empire's mind. Then I guess I better make myself comfortable, he muttered, pushing himself to his feet. The golden-eyed Karnath, the one who had fought beside him, stood nearby. It wasn't quite the same now. The scars on its body had turned into flowing runes, and its eyes burned brighter than ever. You shouldn't be here, it said in a voice that was no longer broken or growling, but clear. This place remakes us. You are not meant for the code. Voss wiped blood from his lip and grinned. Story of my life. They walked together through the shifting plains of the digital world, a landscape built for memories and DNA, where every step rippled with echoes of lives long gone. Towers rose and fell in the distance like breathing lungs. The golden-eyed Karnath gestured toward the largest one. That is where the signal comes from. The throne of the architects. Your creators? Voss asked. Once, the alien replied. Now they're only code. They sleep, dreaming of hunger and order. But when you lit the fire, they stirred. They want to merge your kind, ours, everything that survives, into one code. Unity? Voss said. Control, it corrected. The Empire's way of saving life by ending choice. Voss stopped walking. And you? The alien turned, its 6 eyes catching the golden light. I followed instinct. You taught me something different. That instinct alone isn't life. They reached the tower. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, engraved with lines that pulse like veins. The air hummed with power, alive with whispering voices. Voss placed his hand on the surface. Instantly, the world around him shifted. The ice plains, the wreckage, the dreadnought, all replaced by a dark, infinite void. A figure appeared before him. Not alien, not human, a blend of both. A shape woven from light and data, 1,000 shifting faces flickering like reflections in water. We are the architects, it said. We seeded your kind. You are our experiment, chaos given will. Voss stared it down. You made us. No, we designed you. You made yourselves. The figure stepped closer. And now you have lit the old hunger again. You can end the cycle by merging the human code with ours. Voss frowned. And what happens if I say no? Then everything dies. The Carnith, humanity, the stars. Chaos without structure cannot last. He took a step forward. You talk like life's something that can be edited, but it's supposed to fight back, to fail, to learn. The architect's many faces watched him. Failure is waste. Voss smirked. No, it's freedom. The tower's glow intensified. Threads of energy shot upward, binding the sky into a cage of light. The ground cracked beneath his feet. The golden-eyed Carnith shouted, "They're activating the merge!" Voss raised his rifle, but the architects didn't flinch. You cannot shoot light, human. He holstered the weapon. Maybe not. He reached up to his chest and ripped free the small reactor cell from his suit, the same one that had reignited the Carnith fires on Rathuan 9. Its light pulsed wildly in his palm. "What is that?" the architects asked. "Chaos," Voss said. "The humankind." He slammed the reactor into the tower's base. The world exploded in light. It wasn't fire this time. It was creation itself, tearing, rewriting, remaking. The monolith shattered. The sky folded inward, and every thread of energy connecting the Carnith snapped like strings under a blade. The architects screamed, their many faces dissolving into static. "You cannot stop the code." Voss shouted back through the storm. "I'm not stopping it. I'm rewriting it." He closed his eyes as the world dissolved around him. When he opened them again, he was back on the ice. The storm had stopped. The dreadnought above was silent, half sunken, its once glowing veins dark. Carnith lay scattered across the plains, alive, but free. No glowing symbols, no connection, just life. The golden-eyed one limped toward him. "What did you do?" Voss smiled weakly. "Gave you what humanity's best at, the ability to make a choice." The alien stared at him, then slowly bowed. "You destroyed gods." He looked up at the dawn sky. "No," he said softly. "I just reminded them who made fire first." Dawn came late to Rathuan 9. The sky glowed the color of molten glass, pale and fragile, as if the planet was learning how to breathe again. Captain Aric Voss stood where the tower had been. Now there was only glass, smooth, black, and humming softly, as if still remembering what it used to be. He had slept for hours, maybe days. The air no longer burned his lungs. The wind carried warmth. All around him, life was moving a guy. And the Carnith were different now. No longer glowing, no longer chained by the old hunger. Some had begun to build shelters from wreckage and bone. Others hunted quietly, sharing what they caught. They moved with purpose, but not instinct. They were learning something older than empire, cooperation. And Voss watched them with the stillness of a man who'd seen too many endings and wasn't sure if this one would hold. His AI broke the silence. "Your pulse is erratic, Captain. You haven't eaten." "I'm watching history," he said. "That's enough. History doesn't feed you." "Maybe not," he muttered, "but it keeps me going." From the east, the golden-eyed Carnith approached. The once wounded leader now carried a new weapon, a spear forged from melted armor and crystallized glass. It knelt before Voss, though he never asked for that. "You broke the code," it said in its newly clear voice. "You unmade the architects." Voss shook his head. "No, I changed the script." The alien tilted its head. "And what are we now?" Voss looked past it, at the others moving across the plains. "Free," he said. That's what scares every empire that ever lived. The golden-eyed one lowered its gaze. Freedom is heavy. What if we misuse it? Then you'll do what humans do. Voss said, you'll mess it up, fix it, and try again. A tremor rippled through the ice beneath them. The AI flared red across his visor. Captain, energy spike, upper atmosphere. Voss's hand went to his sidearm. From the dreadnought? No, from orbit, unknown origin. He looked to the sky. The clouds split open, revealing a glittering streak descending to the stratosphere. It wasn't a weapon. It was too controlled, too graceful. It landed miles away in a burst of light and dust. The golden-eyed Carnith hissed softly. Another ship? Voss frowned. Not one of yours. He started walking. The crashed site burned like a fallen star. Shards of silver and black littered the ice. At the center, half buried, stood a capsule no bigger than a shuttle, its surface marked by both human and alien runes. Voss brushed frost from the hull and froze. The emblem beneath his glove wasn't Carnith. It was Terran Vanguard, his own fleet. AI, he said, voice low. How old is this? Unclear. The metal's wrong. It's self-repairing. Almost organic. The hatch hissed. Steam poured out, and from within stepped a figure clad in armor, as smooth as water, its visor reflecting the alien dawn. Captain Aric Voss. The voice said, his voice, only cleaner, colder. You were not meant to survive this mission. Voss raised his rifle. That's a hell of an introduction. I am Designate 42, Vanguard Continuity Protocol. I was created from your genetic record. The Council ordered a failsafe to retrieve the human code. You mean the one I rewrote? The copy tilted its head. Correction, the one you corrupted. Humanity's evolution is incomplete without structure. You will come with me. Behind Voss, the golden-eyed Carnith stepped forward, its spear humming faintly. This one speaks like the architects. Voss didn't take his eyes off the replica. Yeah, he said, because maybe we didn't kill them all. The clone's visor flared. Humanity was always meant to ascend, not fracture. The Carnith are variables. You introduced error. Funny thing about error, Voss said, it's how learning starts. The clone's arm unfolded into a plasma blade. Then let us test your lesson. The fight was a blur of light and motion. The clone moved faster, smarter. Every strike a perfect algorithm. Voss blocked, rolled, fired. Sparks rained across the glass field. AI, he barked. Options. He's reading your tactics in real time. You can't outfight him. Then maybe I don't need to. Voss backed toward the molten fissure that glowed beneath the surface. The heart of the shattered tower. The clone followed, blade raised high. At the last step, Voss threw his rifle aside and met the blow head-on, catching the plasma with both gauntlets. Energy scorched through his armor, pain blinding. You're fighting yourself, the clone said. You can't win. Voss gritted his teeth. I know. That's why humans cheat. He twisted, dragging the clone's blade into the fissure. The ground exploded in white fire. When the light faded, the clone was gone, melted into the glowing glass. Voss lay on his back, coughing. Half his visor burned away. The golden-eyed Carnith leaned over him. You are hurt. He laughed weakly. Story of my species. From the fissure, faint motes of light drifted upward, dissolving into the air, fragment of code rewriting themselves into something new. What is that? The alien asked. Seeds, Voss said softly. Pieces of us. Maybe pieces of both. He sat up, watching the light scatter into the dawn. That's what the architects never understood. Evolution isn't perfect. It's stubborn. It survives by refusing to stop trying. Hours later, The first green shimmer appeared across the horizon. Tiny sprouts pushing through the melted glass. The ice was thawing. The golden-eyed leader watched in silence. Life returns. Yeah, Voss said quietly. And maybe this time it gets to write its own code. He looked toward the stars, toward the endless dark still waiting to be explored. Somewhere out there, new signals were already forming. He smiled faintly. Let's see who answers next.